With an international cricketing career spanning more than 2 decades and after 15,000 runs plus in his international test and one-day international and T20 career, Matthew Hayden, of course, he's become a local hero in Chennai and around India, much loved for his absolute ability to strike terror in the hearts of bowlers and the opposition team. He is also a very, very keen car enthusiast side of him that many of us do not know. He loves driving, enjoys going off-roading, and enjoys a lot of his drives along his beachside hometown. Now let's hear it from him about what it is that he likes about cars. Let's get a bit to know about how he enjoys his driving and also a little more details about his association with Mahindra as the brand's global brand ambassador.
For me, it was the opportunity to explore different places, different countries, and it wasn't long before you had to find your way into a vehicle of choice that would take you somewhere around your adventurous soul. I grew up in a very small town in regional Australia called Kingaroy. So the very first thing I drove was a tiny little greenfield mower deck at 8, and that scaled into vehicles, heavy duty tractors, trucks. So I've been driving a long time. I'm now 52, but always had a heart and eye for quality adventure and an outdoor way of life, which is how a lifestyle is in Australia. So vehicles just kind of match the hatch as to what that looked like. Yeah, I started, I suppose, exploring the world when I was 14. It was the first time I jumped in a plane. If you said that to a 14-year-old now, they've probably been to 15, 20 different countries because we're a global community. But in those days, it was, quite a thing to go overseas. And my first tour for Australia was in 1993, and I was 22 years of age, to explore different parts of the world. Drove through the Americas, all over England, through Europe, getting used to different tom-toms and different vehicles, travelling on different sides of the roads. A great thing about Australia and India actually is that we drive on the same side of the road. Thank goodness for the Brits.
So walk us through your garage of today.
I have a fleet of cars. I have an XUV 700. I have a Scorpio N.
Back in Australia?
Back in Australia. And I have 2 pickups. So the 2 pickups are my vehicles that I've just tried to, I don't know what I've done. I've just tried to flog them, basically. They're unbreakable cars. They're tough, rugged little truck that's earned a really special place, not only in my heart, but in the heart of regional Australians that do it tough. They're tough people. They're dry growing croppage community or small lot holdings of production beef, sheep, goats, and they've got just a great legacy in the bush. Of course, Mahindra's only sold those vehicles up until this point. The last couple of years now, you've seen the full fleet of Mahindra vehicles that are now launching off their global platforms.
Right.
So what I do with these vehicles, I tow boats, I pull them across sand, which they're remarkable. I drive out in the bush. We have some of the harshest conditions in terms of heat, rocks, not huge mountains like you have here in India, but really substantial off-road tracks, which follow kind of the routes of our forefathers that were very much a community of nomad people driving, and stockmen that drove stock through large periods of vast, and I mean vast geography to get to places that have got rain. So there's a great four-wheel drive adventure community in Australia, and my vehicles, they eat that stuff up. I reckon the E supercar of Mahindra would be something that I probably wouldn't like it, to be really honest, as much as my middle son, who's 18, who loves these fast cars. And I mean, that thing there, I've seen it test driven around India, and it looks pretty remarkable. Pininfarina coming on board, you can just see like how sensational they've, you know, made the design elements.
Yeah,
beautiful, sleek design elements.
You mean the Batista, right?
Yeah, yeah. That thing there is next level.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a techie type car person, but you know, something like 0 to 100 in 3 point something seconds in it. I mean, that's phenomenal. But I'm not, as I said, I'm not a fast person. So ultimately, for me, it's about how it is that I can go anywhere on the planet. And if I'm in a vehicle, and I'm sitting on one right now, if I'm in a vehicle that can do that, that's got the capabilities, the authenticity, the engineering behind it, let someone else worry about that stuff. What the vehicles do make you look like a decent operator of a vehicle. And that's how it should be. Good design should make it really simple.
Absolutely.
So this thing here wouldn't be a bad dream one day either. Yeah.
So have you tried your hand? Do you enjoy driving on the edge? Have you tried your hand?
No, I'm not an edge person. I'm an opening batsman. we're never on the edge. We, as Sonny G. Gavaskar would say, we play in the we. That's how we operate. I'm a sure, steady driver. I'm 52 years old, and I'm not just sure and steady, I'm a survivor. And you know, one of the things that I've been, and all of our kids have learnt to drive in the manual pickup.
Yeah.
So sure and steady. So one of the things that, you know, going through safety courses with all the kids now is that they congratulate the people that bring the children to these safety events because they're the survivors. And that's one of the first things that I say to the kids is that you follow certain procedures, certain rules, look after your vehicle, go around the car before you start a drive and see if the tyres are pumped up. Simple things like that. Look at the fuel level. You know, in Australia, you get out of fuel and you can be in a very vulnerable situation very quickly.
Absolutely.
There's not the scale of people and humanity in Australia. So being sure and steady, for me, kind of wins the race.
Yeah. Have you tried your hand at off-roading maybe?
Definitely, like that's probably one of my great passions. Where I live is on a beautiful remote community called North Stradbroke Island. It has 50 kilometres of beach. So my vehicle is very much tailor-made towards that as an environment. For any of those car enthusiasts that like off-roading, sand is one of the hardest mediums to make sure that your vehicle can handle it. Simple things like footprint of your tyres, tyre pressure, they really matter. And I've seen some of the most expensive vehicles not follow some of the basic rules, including just also recovery rules in terms of snap straps and areas, attachments to vehicles, winches, and they get themselves in big trouble.
Yeah.
So yes, the adventure for me as someone that's driven all around Australia is something that is right there for me in my heart, yeah. After I finished playing cricket, probably one of the highlights of my married life is taking my wife through Tuscany. We went up through the Montepulciano region, and I mean, Tuscany, you can basically just close your eyes and point to the map and somehow you end up in some remarkable wine destination that's got tomatoes and basil and the marriage of some sort of carbohydrate around that just, it makes your heart sing. So that was a great adventure.
Yeah.
For about 3 years, I was partner of Northern Territory Tourism back in Australia, and I did a drive campaign with my whole family that started in the Red Centre, place that it's sort of like the spiritual heartbeat of Australia. So started there, and of course it's a long way. It's a proper 2-3 day trek, you know, through Northern Territory. Ended up in Darwin.
Right.
And there you're going through the wetlands of Australia, obviously the deserts of Australia as well. You're going through vast open country where you might not see a car for a day when you're driving. It's
kangaroos.
It's
for sure.
just gigantic. So yeah, that for me is probably another one of, you know, the more memorable drive trips I've done. Just had that conversation with Dad at 87 to say, I think it's time. Now, this is the bloke that taught me how to drive.
Yeah.
Taught me all the way through my life. Tractors, buses, trucks, you name it. And it's just difficult because, you know, here's a man that loves driving. And my brother, that's my elder of 5 years, we used to drive to cricket camps because he was a very good cricketer, probably a better cricketer than me. And we used to drive from Kingaroy or country Queensland down to Adelaide. Mm-hmm. Now that's a 2.5 day trip. But there's something really special about doing a road trip. It gives you an opportunity as a family to talk.
Yeah.
It gives you an opportunity to sort of get off the train as well, because you can only drive maybe 4 or 5 hours before, like we did the other day in Durham, Charlotte, stop at a harbour or get some street chai or call in and see someone and have a chat. That's the great advantage of a slower pace travel. You know, we're so used to just tripping globally with planes. You fly from one exotic destination to the other, but you see nothing. Whereas a road trip, you actually see everything, you feel everything. And you get really intimately involved in what's outside your car and also how the car's giving you feedback internally. So it's like publishing rather than, and reading newspapers as opposed to seeing something online and just absorbing it that way. It's just not the same. It loses its romance.
Absolutely. So have you tried driving in India?
I have driven in India.
Wow. Okay.
I've got one rule, and that is that you just look after what's happening in front of you, and then the rest is not your fault. Is that close enough?
But that's quite a bit of daring for you to try driving in India.
Yeah, one of the greater things that I've done more recently is with my daughter Grace. We were over shooting at the SUV proving track here in Chennai, and whilst that's not necessarily driving, you know, outside on the streets, just having this ability to be able to see how well engineered these vehicles are. You know, it's a formidable testing track, and in particular, it's 4x4 adventure zone. Will put you into a landscape where it's emulating pretty much every environment: sand, rock, the different surfaces, the different elevations, the different descents. Starts to activate key features within the car as well. You know, which is really, you know, key. For this vehicle here, the TAR, you know, the BLD is a real factor that works hard. In the vehicles that I've got, we've got the Eaton diff lock. So oftentimes I'm getting in environments where I am on one wheel and that wheel is so critical, and they're such a tough, rugged little truck that they'll just climb their way out of anything.
Right.
So to get into kind of a safe zone like the SUV proving track for my daughter, who hasn't done as much off-roading for me, is a great life lesson, because she can see how capable the vehicles are. As they say, it's, you know, telling someone is a degree of understanding, but it's not until you actually do it that you go,
absolutely,
wow, that's remarkable.
Yeah, true. So what's your take on EVs?
Well, obviously, from the brand's point of view, they're not in Australia yet, and they may not be for some time. We are always going to have the battle between the scale of humanity and the cost of delivery of the infrastructure that's required to then service those vehicles. They will be absolutely 100% fine, as they are now in Australia. They've been in Australia now, various brands have been in Australia for the last 5 or 6 years at least, and they're very popular. But outside of the metros, where, as I said, you might not see anyone for a day on the road, there's going to be some time that's taken for that infrastructure to be in place. But as a general rule, you know, for me, we are in an infinite expansion phase in humanity, and we've got finite resources. And so we need to find a blend of how that's going to operate within our daily lives. And we need to work out individually, collectively, globally, on scale, what that compromise is going to be. And I really admire India's buy into that. I think Australia is a little bit behind in that, and maybe it's blindsided by the fact that the majority of its financial position is in and around the mining sector and the opportunities that that creates for our country being so rich in minerals, rare minerals, and also metallurgical coal and the likes. So we're also going through that discussion as a country and community, and you know, that for me is important in terms of you've got to change yourself before you look to change other people. My connection with Mahindra is almost a decade long. It started with a beautiful, candid conversation with Anand Mahindra in his offices in Mumbai. It was a curiosity to meet one of the great industrialists of the modern age. And I asked him the question around why he really wanted to be in a market like Australia, and to that end, could I help him, if he was interested, in delivering that project to a country as small as Australia with 25 million people. You know, that's not even the population of Mumbai. And actually of that 25 million people, we're 1 million strong in Indian community as well, in particular from the Punjabi region. So he gave a beautiful answer. He said, look, if as a brand I can compete in a market like Australia, where it's got 65 original car manufacturers on the market, with safety standards that are above the normal global standards, including India's, if we can compete there, we'll compete anywhere around the world. And I think it's that sort of inspiration for me, who was still playing the game at that stage for Chennai Super Kings, that inspired me to get behind the brand, initially as an ambassador for the brand, a spokesperson of the brand. And then on my journey over the last 5 years, being a director of the business and being involved from more of the business to business capability as a director of the business. So, you know, my role has diversified over the years. And to be really honest, I mean, the global ambassador role is probably not one that I'm actively at right now. But in my mind anyway, that's certainly what I am, because anywhere I go, I talk about the value of the Mahindra brand, the global thinking of the Mahindra brand, and the global and entrepreneurial type approach that the company has. And its inspirational leader in Anand, who introduced me to the life behind the brand. And in Australia, what it's really meant to Australians, the brand, has been a tough, rugged truck that's born out of the bush and is now grown beyond any expectations to now support the metro communities with the ranges of cars that you see here in India, all built on now global platforms, all released globally. And Australia's like just that, I would consider us to be a 15-year-old startup.
Yeah.
Because now the product has reached. It's not obviously just the auto business, it's also the ag business as well, which has been really profitable in Australia now for some time, and will continue to be as well. For me, where here is, firstly, is in Chennai. Look, I came here in '96, it was my first tour. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. Firstly, I couldn't believe what I was understanding about the deep connection to cricket. In Australia, cricket's one of 15 sports, 20 sports. Yes, it's our biggest summer sport, but it's sort of no sweat. Like here, cricket is life. It's just, even if you don't like cricket, and maybe you're a good example of you like the game, but it's like, it's all around you, so you sort of have to absorb, like your mates are talking about it, like your mates will be talking about the fact that CSK lost, or they won, or they've got MS Dhoni, or they've got Suresh Raina, or they've got these global superstars, you know, like Freddie Flintoff or Steve Fleming, you know, who's coached the side, formed as a player in the side, now coached them to 5 IPLs. So cricket is life in this country, along with its great food. It's great coffee and tea culture here. It's coastal culture. It's yoga, it's music, it's dance, it's language. I mean, Tamil, you need 15 tongues to talk Tamil. please don't get me asked to talk Tamil. I was sitting inside change rooms so desperately trying to learn, and I got about 2 words out, Wanakam and Seri, and that's about it. Tike? Yeah, so this place has given me such, it just, look, when I think about Tamil Nadu and Chennai in particular, it just brings a huge smile on my face because there is so much here I love. I've got deep connections to the cricket community, deep friendships, lifelong friendships, a position, you know, within the landscape of sport like no other. IPL has brought out the life of cricket. I'm still broadcasting on the game. You're still hearing my dulcet tones over the airwaves as I sit inside your lounge room, and I love it. It has just become a huge part of my life.
Right.